So then I took a brief break for Taco Tuesday and returned right around 5 minutes and 40 seconds where Brock is talking about how if every nation that separated parents and kids was barbaric, then that means it's everybody. Because, of course, in due process, if a parent of a child is breaking the law and gets arrested for it, the parent will go to jail, and then that leaves this unsupervised child. Then what happens, right? Of course, in the American system, and if these are citizens that we're talking about, then the children will go into care facilities and be, of course, given foster homes, etc. I think, though, that this statement about this is a regular thing to do is somewhat a misleading oversimplification of what the real complaint is with regards to illegal immigrants, because it's not exactly separation that is the problem. It's that separation can occur, and if somebody is prosecuted and then has to go to jail for 2 years, then there's a huge timeline. And since that many of these facilities where people are being detained, children and parents, etc., are being detained, don't have consistent tracking of the people that are in their facilities, then this makes it difficult to impossible at best to then reunite appropriate children with their parents. So then we move on at around 6 minutes and 20 seconds to this goofy comment about how if people are so worried about parents and children being separated, then they should be worried about all the people that get thrown into jail because they decided to smoke a little weed. I'm not even sure why that is inserted into this conversation, because it is a straight up red herring. It has nothing to do with the immigrant situation and is its own issue besides, so it's just kind of a distraction. So then we move on to about 8 minutes and 40 seconds where Brock makes the statement that there's nothing immoral about enforcing existing immigration laws. This is perhaps one of the most infuriating parts of his video. I just want to be really clear here that probably on this channel I am one of the biggest advocates of enforcing the rule of law, and I often argue in these types of debates for the side of the law. But I am under no misconception ever that just because a thing is legal, that means that it is also ethical and or moral. Legality does not equal morality. And I find myself wondering, does Brock apply the same standard of because it's legal, it's therefore moral to other topics like the enforcement of Roe v. Wade? It is exactly the question of morality and human rights that is the driving objection behind the current administration's policies handling immigrants. The very crux of the argument is that despite legalities, is it moral and or right? So to brush it off as irrelevant is to entirely ignore the very arguments and philosophies upon which the laws themselves are founded and or changed or broken. So moving on then to about 9 minutes and 20 seconds, we get the statement that nobody wants to see parents ripped from their children. And although what I'm about to say is entirely anecdotal, I can say for a fact that my very own neighbor has expressed to me in the past that they don't care one whit what happens to immigrants and immigrant children. They want to see them out of this country by hook or by crook. So to say that nobody wants to see this, well, that's not true. There are, in fact, people out there that don't care. And by not caring, that means they're okay with this treatment of these people. In this conversation with my neighbor, when I had it, I brought up that it is a violation of their human rights to keep them in these facilities where there are complaints of abuses and basically assaults of various kinds, where they sometimes die due to lack of medical attention. And literally the response was, so what? Right? I found that very shocking to hear coming from somebody But I'm pretty sure that my neighbor is not the one sole person in 350 million Americans that has that opinion. And I want to speak to this on a little bit of a different topic, nothing that Brock touched on that I can think of in his video, but something that occurs to me. I do not have, I guess you could say, a shiny, happy feeling about the things that may go on in these centers. I don't believe that illegals are detained and that there are no violations, that there are no assaults that occur to both men and women, that there is no neglect, that there is no abuse of power by the guards or the people who are keeping them. There's no way that you can convince me that in that large of a population, it doesn't happen. And anybody who thinks that, oh my God, how could humans nobody would do something so terrible, you're wrong. Go and read the Prison Stanford experiment if you don't know what I'm talking about. It was a 2-week experiment in which college students volunteered to, some of them be prisoners, some of be the prison guards. It took 1 week of these students being in these affected roles that they were given before the students who were in the position of being the guards just completely started tormenting those students who were the captives in the situation. And the students who were the captives radically fast became very demoralized and just submitted themselves to whatever it was that they were being put through. It's a very chilling read if you've never heard of it, and I would really suggest looking into it because humans devolve very quickly into being absolutely cruel to one another. So I'm hard-pressed to think that everything is just pristine and above the boards in its operations in these detention facilities. These are illegal immigrants who don't have any protections or rights under our Constitution. This type of behavior already happens in our prison system. It's well documented. And we have all kinds of laws and policies in place to try to deter the abuse by prison guards on prisoners. Phew, sorry, I got a little ranty myself there for a minute. So the last thing we hear is at about 11 minutes where we get posed this kind of rhetorical question of, are the American people supposed to inherit the economic issues of other countries by virtue of bringing the immigrants from those countries into here, and then those immigrants presumably implementing their own systems into our country? So, of course, the answer to that is no, Americans aren't supposed to inherit the economic issues of other countries. But neither is America supposed to toss human rights by the wayside and forego due process while we are not inheriting those things. Lockean philosophy is one of the most fundamental philosophies that underpins the basis of this entire country. John Locke was an Enlightenment philosopher and largely on the topic of liberalism. And one of the most fundamental aspects of libertarian philosophy is that we all have inalienable human rights by virtue of our own existence. If you even remotely believe in your own rights as an American citizen and human being, then you must of necessity believe that all humans have these same fundamental rights, because that's how we get those rights as Americans, not because the government gives them to us, but because our government was founded on determining that those were rights that we already had. If you don't believe that, then you either don't understand the premise behind the core documents of this country, or you don't actually believe in your own inalienable right to life and liberty. We cannot claim as a country to believe in human rights and liberty and individual freedom, but only if you're a citizen. That would mean that you don't believe in those things at all as fundamental attributes of existence, but rather things that you have only by virtue of happening to live in a country where the government gives you those things. And that is the very antithesis of the ideas that founded America. Thank you everybody for listening tonight. I know this was a really long video, but I guess that it seemed that Brock's video deserved something of an in-depth and lengthy answer. So tomorrow will be Nathan Brendan Masters on Wednesday, and I hope you all have a great evening and a happy Taco Tuesday to you. I will see you all on the flip side.